Hello once more, and here we are with the first edition of the BV podcast for 2026. And all of us in Dorset are no doubt looking forward to longer days so we can get out and appreciate our lovely county a bit more. Welcome from me, Jenny Devitt, to this January edition. So what's coming up in the next half hour or so? We'll start, as we always do, by hearing from the BV's editor, Laura Hitchcock. She'll be followed by the Dorset Insider, which tackles unwanted gifts from Dorset Council. The Grumbler laments the lack of tourist publicity for all the inland parts of the county, since rural Dorset hardly gets a mention in a recent Visit Dorset promotional video. And we'll end by hearing from the CEO of Dorchester-based charity Help and Kindness. John Sloper talks to me about the value of gratitude and saying thank you. First off, Laura.
Do you know, you can forget these posh New Years. I think I'm in the market for a low-mileage 2005. Maybe a well-cared-for 1997. I just miss being plain old sad about the world. Not this perpetual catastrophically horrified, just regular sad, the kind you could shake off with a hot drink or a long phone call with your sister or a decent walk. We launched the BV in the depths of lockdown, mid-pandemic, when the world felt strange and fragile and frightening. Every month I wrote my editor's letter with a mug of tea in one hand and a virtual pom-pom in the other, cheerily insisting we'll all bounce back soon. 5 years later, and I'll be honest, the positivity is hanging on by its fingernails. But we did at least personally end 2025 on a high. Christmas was loud and chaotic and just brilliant. We had 3 generations squeezed elbow to elbow around our table, which officially seats 8, but actually sat a new record of 11 thanks to Dorchester timber and a heroic delivery of a sheet of cut-to-size chipboard. The fridge was emptied, the dishwasher was permanently on, cheese seemed to feature at every single meal, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. Then New Year's Day arrived, everybody went home, the stunning frozen sunshine appeared, and I immediately caught the latest, not COVID, but thinks it's really COVID, virus. I spent the first week of 2026 under a blanket with endless mugs of hot honey and lemon, grumpily coughing, feeling both grotty and grateful. Because even with all the throat-clenching doom and global drama, yes, the news is still doing its level best to make us all despair, I'd had a full nest for the first time in 2 years. And I also had time and space with a good book, thank you Thursday Murder Club, and that counts for something. So, no rallying cry this month, no silver linings pep talk, just a nod. From one tired grown-up to another. We're still here, still showing up, still muddling through. For January, that'll do.
And now the Dorset Insider, which is always contributed to the BV by an anonymous but experienced parish councillor. And this insider discusses the issue of unwanted gifts, and Christmas gifts they are not.
It's that time of year when we're packing up the last of the festive detritus and looking forward to the first spring flowers, possibly deciding what to do with an unwanted Christmas gift or two. You'll know the type of thing, something that is clearly of no use to anyone, or which was bought with little real insight into the person it was intended for. If I sound like an ungrateful Grinch, I'm not really. I was simply reminded of another dodgy offer that came my way just before Christmas. As I mentioned in my November missive, Dorset Council has recently drawn up a list of assets that it wishes to dispose of by offering them to parish and town councils. Well, yes, lovely. Let's all write a list of stuff we no longer wish to do. Mine will fill this magazine. I opened the spreadsheet with not a little glee, thinking of opportunities and projects to develop our parish infrastructure, especially with nearly 300 new houses being dumped on our nearest fields. However, I soon came back down to earth with a thud. The list was definitely a wish list, but no part of it registered on my wishes. Instead, this list is a grand dump from Council HQ of anything that involves work on their part which doesn't generate income. Or, as I continued to read down the list, things that could cause problems in the future. The offers for my own patch include an area of land that we, the parish, already own. There were patches of grass labelled as picnic areas that would obviously need a regular mower or some hungry goats. I saw that another parish has been offered the opportunity to grab an old dump site, complete with festering toxic waste cocktails that will clearly be an issue in years to come. There were lots of loos looking for new ownership. Obviously, they will need to be maintained. And that raises another point. What if no one takes on the loos and the council decides to close them? How will older people and the disabled manage? As I examined the asset list, I couldn't find a single thing that would be useful to the parish. What was potentially viable was in reality already owned, either by us or someone else. You do have to wonder about the list's accuracy if there are assets on it that don't even belong to Dorset Council. The entire exercise raises even further concerns for smaller parishes around volunteering and maintenance. Most of our own volunteers who cut the parish grass are in the over 75 age group, and we are not getting anyone younger or fitter coming forward to help with maintenance, so we are increasingly looking at contractors. Plus, some of the work required is heavy labour, where machinery is needed. Then, like every parish, we have a few rewilding gurus, hell-bent on turning all our verges into jungles. All well and good until the plants die off and the complaints start because it looks a mess, or you can't see to pull out at a junction. All this gets me grumbling over my coffee. The fire sale of unwanted Christmas gifts from the council all comes with caveats. Very little that is income generating will be given to parish and town councils. Naturally, though, the maintenance bills for all of it will need to come from the precept, which means we'll get the blame for raising it. And where does it stop? Cornwall Council has just decided it will no longer be emptying dog bins and litter bins in some areas, including social housing sites. Not that I want to plant ideas in Dorset Council's money-saving plans, but just imagine if that happened here. Who does the council think will take on that job, especially with all the issues on accessing waste and recycling centres, and just getting people to pick up dog mess in the first place? I hope the well-meaning Cornish councillor who dreamed up the notion steps in something smelly and nasty. And another thing, sorry, I'm on a roll this morning. Parish councils spend a lot of time trying to recruit new councillors. It's no longer the domain of white, middle-class, retired old men. And yes, I know, most are absolute gems with a plethora of knowledge. The people coming forward today are younger and have families and jobs. Parish councillors are unpaid. There's a limit to the amount of work they can do when they have other commitments and mortgages to pay. We also have the incoming millennials and Generation Z, who work entirely differently from the baby boomers and Gen X. Good parish councillors work hard. While we are batting off developer number 5 from trying to create yet more unaffordable luxury homes, or working to save the village pub, taking on a bit of grass that needs mowing because the council doesn't want to do it is not a priority. Frankly, when I desperately need help and support to deal with macho developers determined to turn villages into ticky-tacky dormitory towns, I'm just not going to take on the local authority responsibilities. I want the best possible outcome for my patch, and that includes not making it a dumping ground for other people's problems.
Next we'll hear from another anonymous contributor, but this time it's not a councillor, and this is about the county that Visit Dorset forgot.
The new big-budget Visit Dorset promotional video has recently been released and no doubt sent far and wide to media outlets and influencers in the hope of drawing more visitors to the county. So far, so normal. That is, after all, Visit Dorset's one job. I happen to work in marketing, so of course I had a professional nosy. So far, the video has had 375,000 views on YouTube. Good job, Visit Dorset. The film is 57 seconds long. It's beautifully shot, glossy, professionally edited, and it tells you everything you need to know about how Dorset is still being sold to the world. Cliff tops, beaches, sea kayaks, sailing boats, coastal paths, big skies over water. Dorset apparently begins and ends at the shoreline. If you blink, you might catch a fleeting glimpse of Sherborne Abbey's ceiling. 2 seconds, perhaps, followed by a few seconds of a pretty independent shop and a bakery or cafe. You'd only know the shop was in Sherborne if you already knew. It could be anywhere. I still don't know where the bakery is, but I'm fairly sure it's not Oxford's, Dorset's 200-year-old family bakery that still uses 100-year-old ovens and a 75-year-old dough mixer, the last of its kind in the world. Because why would a PR firm think that was worth shouting about?
After that, it's back to the coast, right up until the closing titles, which roll over the only genuinely rural moment in the entire film. A man running after his dog across a stubble field amid farmland. That's it. Rural Dorset, reduced to a backdrop for the final credits. This all matters so much more than you think. Dorset is not a narrow coastal strip with a bit of countryside tacked on behind it. Roughly 3/4 of the county is rural. Its market towns, villages, farms, hills, footpaths, forests and historic sites are not niche extras. They are the place. And yet, once again, they are barely visible. I understand the tagline is "for a world less travelled," which may explain the absence of Durdle Door and Gold Hill. But it doesn't explain the absence of everything else. There are no hill forts, no deep woodland walks, no chalk downland, no ancient tracks and holloways, hidden valleys, ancient parish churches, Georgian market town high streets, or even the thatched villages that people already travel hundreds of miles to see. And certainly nothing so dull as Dorset's enormous creative and arts sector, including Dorset Art Weeks, one of the largest open studio events in the UK, which attracts tens of thousands of visitors. So none of the things that make inland Dorset not just attractive, but accessible. Why are we making Dorset look so privileged? How exactly is taking the family sailing more aspirational and accessible to most UK households than a walk across a hill fort? Sailing and kayaking require money, kit, confidence, good weather and, crucially, prior experience. Walking requires shoes and a sandwich, yet the former are endlessly promoted as Dorset's calling card, while the latter is treated as a footnote, if it's acknowledged at all. This isn't about knocking the coast. Dorset's coastline is rightly celebrated. It is spectacular, and it underpins a vital part of the county's tourism economy. But it is not the county's whole story, and pretending that it is comes at a real cost. Every time Dorset is marketed as a coastal playground, the rural economy is sidelined. Independent pubs, B&Bs, walking guides, farm attractions, food producers, market towns, and countless small inland businesses are left fighting for scraps of attention, despite offering experiences that are often cheaper, greener, and more realistic for families and older visitors alike. The video just has the feel of being written by people who don't actually live here. The PR agency behind it is based in Exeter, which may be defensible on paper, but it raises an awkward question. If you don't live here, do you really understand what it is that you are missing? Local knowledge isn't parochialism, it's perspective. And a little more of it would have gone a long way here. Dorset's persistent over-reliance on coastal imagery suggests a strategic blind spot that's becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Tourism marketing is not just about attracting visitors, it's about directing them. And for Visit Dorset, that's about spreading footfall, spend and opportunity across a whole county, not simply funneling it repeatedly to the same already pressured places. Dorset deserves better than being reduced to a postcard of itself. Rural Dorset, in particular, deserves to be seen. When this is how the county is promoted, it's no wonder so much of it feels invisible. You can't keep selling Dorset as a playground for the already well-off and then wonder why its rural economy struggles to survive.
Finally, in this January 2026 edition of the BV podcast, we'll hear from John Sloper. He's the CEO of the Dorset charity Help and Kindness, and he talked to me about how much it means to say thank you and the broader issue of gratitude generally.
Well, it strikes me that we're asking a lot of everybody these days, aren't we? We've got so many things going on where people are saying, I haven't got enough of this. We're blaming people left, right and centre for the ills that we encounter. And sometimes I think we can make a bit of progress if we just have a moment and say thank you to the people that are working hard and are trying to do things on our behalf. It kind of just balances up a little bit. We know it's hard for all of us in different ways, and just to kind of come back to that thing of saying thank you, it goes an awful long way to kind of just making people feel that what they're doing is making a difference, that their time and their effort isn't being wasted, and it starts a conversation quite often, to be honest with you, for all sorts of interesting things that then sort of come on from that.
You know, you mentioned the word blame a moment ago, and sadly we do these days live very much in a culture of blame, don't we? Probably not just in this country.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there is an element of which we have to take responsibility for things, and flipping that, externalizing it, then you can say, well, you had responsibility for that and it didn't work out, and the sort of nastier end of that is to become very blaming of things. But I think it creates a shadow over all the progress that we do make, and all the beautiful and the small things that can kind of hold things together, that maybe aren't perfect, but maybe do help move things along a bit, or might make us ready for the next opportunity that comes up where we could try and do a little bit better.
Just on a sort of broader issue, I'm guessing that, John, that saying thank you and showing more gratitude is good for our souls.
I think it is. I mean, there's a lot of things, aren't there, within our culture where people are appreciating things more. So with mindfulness, for instance, is a very strong part of that is appreciating what's happening now, and that appreciation, is a form of gratitude. The fact that we can be in the world, that we have things around us and people and experiences and things like that, it centres us. It kind of takes some of the steam out, which is good for us in knowing which battles we need to fight and which things we can make a difference to. And it kind of, I always feel it, if you have a few moments to think through what you're grateful for, what things are in your life that you've got to be thankful for, I kind of always feel like I'm breathing out. You can feel your shoulders dropping, and you're just kind of taking a moment and centering a little bit. It doesn't make it any easier sometimes, but it kind of feels better in yourself, maybe.
Of course, we do have a lot to be thankful for, don't we? A lot for which we could and should feel gratitude. I mean, for instance, we, unlike many of the people who've come into this country recently from the Ukraine, we don't have war on our doorstep, do we, or on our territory?
That's right. I think there's a lot of things that, I work a lot in meetings and groups and organisations and programmes of work that are deeply concerned about equity. And I think there's something about recognising your own luxuries, your own privilege, your own good fortune as a part of understanding how we can unwittingly become blind to other people's alternative experiences, and that we kind of maybe sometimes presume that everybody's like us, and we overlook kind of how much we have that makes us more privileged, that makes us more capable of things, or has a better outcome when things go bad. And so for me, I think a lot of my self-reflection anyway is around, the being grateful for things reveals sometimes the things that other people don't have, and things where I'm thinking, actually, is that right? Is there something fundamentally wrong here that we need to be looking at? Is there something I could do within my sphere of influence that could make things more equitable, so other people have a similar fighting chance, as I do?
It is, of course, John, isn't it, much broader than recognising and being grateful for the material and other things, that the physical comforts we might have. It's also, if we have good health, there's the gratitude for that as well, isn't there? And we don't always recognise it. We take good health very much for granted a lot of the time, don't we?
We do, and also I think there's a sense in which we can sometimes overlook the good things that come in adversity. And it's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? Because, you think, well, you mentioned good health. I think we sometimes don't appreciate how much goodness people find, or meaning people make, from the adversity they find themselves in. And so whether that is, I suppose it's challenging again that assumption that we have a sort of perfect end state, or a perfect way of being that everybody should aspire to, was actually, I think, a lot of our our gratitude can inform us making positive out of the negative, can give us a chance to think about how actually, although I have this illness, a long-term condition, I'm living in a difficult situation in my life at this point, it doesn't mean that we kind of lose our identity, or we lose our humanity, or we lose our purpose in life. So I think there's something also about gratitude kind of showing some of those things up, and I think the people that I've met who've been deeply inspiring and profoundly kind of moving are those that have made a meaning from their adversity that transcends the adversity, and a lot of that is about appreciating what additional things they might have discovered, their own resilience, the kindness of other people and things like that, and that gets woven into the way that they've coped and the way that they live with that adversity. And it doesn't mean we all have to be as fit and healthy as a 20-year-old white man. We could be living happy and meaningful and interesting lives in all sorts of ways wherever we are.
And of course you have a lot to do with Ukrainian refugees, don't you? So this all applies, I assume, to very much to them and to your dealings with them.
Absolutely. I was at a wonderful event weekend before last, which was celebrating the kind of Christmas and winter festivals of the Ukrainians that are living in Dorset, and a wonderful celebration with lots of music and food and storytelling. And yeah, it is that kind of the gratitude that goes both ways, I suppose. I don't think it's ever just a sort of a give and receive thing. It's something that we can share in, and to be able to receive the gift of their culture that they were sharing on that afternoon with the children and the older people and the families together was absolutely wonderful. And the fact that we were there to some extent as a support for that event, that wasn't the important bit. I was really just so thrilled to be there and to kind of absorb and experience that, and the gratitude flowed both ways. It was wonderful.
And of course that also involves expanding your horizons too, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it's for me. When I wrote in that little piece for the magazine, it expands your horizon not just as it is now, so those kinds of things about the people and their experiences now, but also it stretches back in time, and it stretches into the future as well. So I was mindful of when we're at Christmas and people give us gifts, and sometimes those things, it might be something that has some age to it, and it was made by somebody who's years and years ago, and that these things cross boundaries, don't they? They cross the boundaries of time, they cross relationships, they cross space and place, and it just makes you think. Well, it made me think anyway when I was reflecting on it for writing the piece for the magazine.
So you can, in a way, then it means that you can have the gratitude of armchair travelling.
There's a bit of that, isn't there? And time travel as well, and thinking about whether it's a gift, a painting, or something that somebody's put time and effort into, and part of their life has been woven into that object. And that goes for the simple things that we take for granted a lot, like just the objects that fill our lives, the everyday stuff as well, the food that we eat and buy from the supermarkets, and who's grown that, and where did that grow, and who had the land, and who's nurtured it for all these years. And it's just fascinating to kind of let your mind unravel, I think, a bit from time to time, and see all these connections that are embodied in the things and the relationships that we have around us.
I think, you're talking about the food. I think that a lot of our farmers would be more than happy to hear thank you and gratitude a bit more often than they apparently, or than they seem to do.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that anybody that is in a such a vital role in our society, our community, that sustains us as fundamentally as those that grow our food and make our food, deserve every shred and every possible moment of gratitude that we could spare. But I think that one of the things in that space is that there is almost an imperative that emerges from that, which is gratitude is sometimes not enough. And certainly when we see people who kind of are doing things or are supporting us in ways that make us feel grateful, there is a kind of obligation almost that gratitude it points us towards. So how am I related to you? How am I implicated in what I do for your benefit? And how are we connected? Is there something else we should be doing? And I think in the case of the farmers, what is it that we should be doing? Should we be changing how we buy things so it's fairer for the farmers, that they get a better price for their food? Is it something that's about supporting them with the challenges of running their businesses or the mental health or all the daily stuff that kind of wraps around people? And that extends to anybody, I think, once you start to kind of reflect on some of these things a little bit, but that thank you is a kind of gateway to thinking about the reciprocal nature of that relationship.
So it's a thank you and a gratitude that demonstrates appreciation. You seem to imply in your article in the BV magazine, John, that we don't say thank you often enough and mean it.
Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? Thank you is a kind of habit for some of us. It's part of our kind of good manners and so on. But there are layers to it, aren't there? I think that saying thank you to people when they see you walking down the street, hand in hand or pushing a pram or with a child, and they step to one side, just to say thank you in those moments is profoundly impactful, I think. And having been on both sides of that, when somebody recognises that you've seen them and you've made accommodation for them and recognise that they need access or that they go first, even those tiny things can be really touching. And there's something about being seen and being acknowledged when you say something to somebody or they say something to you, where you think, actually, I'm not just alone in the world. I'm not just kind of navigating my own path here. This is something where we're in it together and we connect with one another in a really gentle way. And often, I think some of the conversations that I've had on the street have arisen through having bumped into somebody a number of times and said thank you or just acknowledged and said hello, and then suddenly you find yourself in a conversation, you're beginning to make a new friend, and it's the gateway has been in some cases just saying thank you.
So that can just create a connection, unlike if you step off the pavement for somebody and they ignore you. You sometimes you think, well, I'm not going to do that again.
Exactly, it's a sort of sustaining, self sort of benefiting thing, isn't it? It does. There's always something that I think that kind of feeds back to you in doing that, and you do it for whatever good reasons that are, your own. But if it is acknowledged, it's a connection. It's saying that you've been seen, that motivation means something, and that there is that kind of reciprocity there. I'm here, you're there, and we see each other. And so much of our world, we pass by one another without even noticing. And so coming back to that thing of it builds a kind of fabric, really, that community spirit, that fabric of society is through these tiny things, I think, often, and particularly where you're new to an area, or you've not been somewhere before, or you've moved in. You mentioned the Ukrainians. The first things that they were saying to us when we started to meet with them was thank you. And there we started our conversations, and we grew the services and support from that. It's brilliant.
And of course, John, if you're keen on keeping your muscles toned, then if you smile as you say thank you, a smile, I believe, exercises a lot more muscles in your face than a frown.
Absolutely, I think that's really true, and I'm a great advocate of smiling randomly to people on the street. I think it's a really it's lovely to see kind of reactions. Now I'm obviously in a privileged white man position, so I recognise that it's not always appropriate and people don't feel comfortable to smile back. But I think that if you see a smiling face, it can make all the difference to your day.
Absolutely. Now, you at Help and Kindness have been receiving lots of gratitude and lots of thanks for what you do, haven't you?
We have, and a lot of it we just pass on, because although we do provide services, in terms of helping people find help, it's other organisations and groups that actually do the hard work of delivering that. So we're quite often a kind of conduit for that gratitude to the people on the ground that do it. But occasionally there are things that we do that people write to us or tell us, and we were reflecting in a team meeting at the beginning of the month about what had happened last year, and some of the highlights for the team were things when they'd been told, "You're a light in my darkness. I was absolutely unable to know what was going to happen next, and you lit a little light for me, and that has made all the difference, and thank you for that." And it just makes gives you goosebumps when somebody says that and shares that, and you think, actually, what we'd intended and what we hope we do, actually does make a difference, and that appreciation shows that what we've been doing is heading in the right direction.
Well, that's lovely, and you mentioned writing, and earlier we were talking about Christmas gifts, and so often these days the thanks for the gift received is done in perhaps a casual manner via text, and I feel that nothing really replaces saying thanks in person, or even writing a card to someone to say thank you, does it?
It's really precious, isn't it? It's that it feels like there's an extra mile that somebody's gone, that they've taken time, and time is precious, and they've given you attention, and attention is precious, and they've made that space to say thank you and to connect with you, and just to kind of continue that kind of positive circle of interconnectedness that we have when we give and receive things from one another.
And you just mentioned interconnectedness, and these are times of what seem to be increasing disconnectedness. So presumably then showing gratitude and saying thanks is even more important than ever.
I think so. I really think so. And it's a thousand of these kind of little things, that we can do, just create a culture. They're part of the kind of the oxygen of connection and culture that we can create. And I think it's a lovely thing, whether you're saying thank you to the shop assistant or the checkout worker, for having helped you as part of getting your weekly shop, or whether it's somebody who's gone way above and beyond and offered you some support with something, that it just brings us closer together. And yeah, it's in so many places, and even just reflecting on things and holding in that space of gratitude internally without necessarily saying it to somebody, but just spending time just thinking about those things for which you're grateful. It creates, I think, as we said earlier, a place of well-being, sometimes a healing, and sometimes just gives you enough space to pick yourself up and get on with the hard things that maybe you're having to face in your life as well.
And of course, if you can feel good because you've smiled at someone, it could be at the checkout, as you said earlier, and they've smiled back, then that's toning your smile muscles on your face, isn't it?
It is. And who wouldn't want to have wrinkles on your face from smiling rather than frowning?
Much better. You finally, John, you mentioned in your article in the BV that someone asked you recently why you do what you do. So why do you?
Well, that was a tough question. That one was. I think it's always so many things, isn't it? It's partly cultural. It's partly family and friends and so on who influence you and give you meaning and give you a kind of direction for life and values. But I do think it does come down to the kind of values and the to some extent the kind of feedback that you get from the work or the things that you do. So I think there are some things that we have to do which are thankless tasks. We'd rather not have to do, like tax returns and so on. But there are also things that we do where it's a passion, and part of that passion is nurtured by the feedback that we get from the people or the things that we work with, whether that's growing a beautiful garden or whether that's running a community project. And for me, the sorts of things that I get involved in, very fortunate, do give a lot of feedback for those things that we do, and they align, they grow out of those values I was brought up with and nurtured and continue to grow and hopefully share with other people.
Well, John, I shall say thank you very much for sparing the time to talk to us for the BV podcast, and I genuinely mean it. Thank you.
Jenny, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for the invitation and for a lovely conversation too. Have a lovely weekend.
That was John Sloper, who's CEO of Help and Kindness. So there we are. We've come to the end of this January 2026 podcast, and so I'll say thank you to you for listening. Do come back again next month for more. In the meantime, bye-bye from me, Jenny Devitt.